What's up guys, it's Patricia from TarantulaHeaven.com. We have Miss Spidey being very active right here. She was hanging out in her log and all of a sudden she just started crawling around. And for anybody who is not familiar with Spidey, she's a Grammostola rosea. She is an elderly spider who I've had for a very long time. And she is awesome. Today I wanted to make a video about can tarantulas eat raw meat? And I wanted to make this video for some time. I just kept forgetting about it, but I finally got the inspiration to do some research and figure it out. It was, I think, a few years ago where I started to see people posting on Facebook in tarantula groups their tarantulas eating things that I wouldn't think that they would normally eat, like shrimp or raw meat. And to be honest, I thought it was a joke at first. Like I thought that people were either photoshopping these things or posting harmful content to like troll people. I didn't really believe it the first time I saw something like that, but I started to see a lot of people posting photos or information about it. And so that kind of intrigued me. Not because I would ever do that, I have no desire to, but it does make me think that that's a really interesting thing about tarantulas that I'd like to share with you. So my first question was, can they actually eat raw meat? It turns out they can, and it makes sense because tarantulas already do eat non-insect meat, like mice, frogs, I'm sure other small rodents or mammals in the wild. In doing my research, I did kind of find that it has to be raw, which makes sense. So they can eat raw beef, chicken, fish, shrimp, makes total sense. You would not want to feed your tarantula ham or like deli meats, anything that's processed, salted, smoked, whatever. That would not be okay for them, and it would also introduce a lot of chemicals to them that they are not supposed to have. It must be raw, real, and unprocessed meat. And someone on Arachnoboards actually shared that breeders in Germany sometimes feed the Theraphosa species bull liver or heart, but they do this strategically. It'll either be before or after mating to keep the female full, so she doesn't have, I guess, more desire to eat her mate. That makes a lot of sense to me. Some people really enjoy doing this. There were some people in reading some of those forum posts that said that like they do this occasionally with their tarantulas and they've had very healthy, beautiful tarantulas, possibly partially because of this. I did not see anybody who did this on a regular basis, and to me that seems kind of foolish because insects are so cheap. I mean, crickets are so cheap, the worms are cheap, the cockroaches, in my experience, I think they're a little bit more expensive, but like we're talking cents, not even, not even dollars in food. And at least with the cockroaches, they breed. And so like I have had a colony, the same colony for years now, and they just keep breeding. And so I don't know why you would, if you have a cheaper food option, why you would spend money on meat to give to your tarantula. But maybe you live in a place where it is really hard to get insects, and so maybe meat is actually a better option for you. But a lot of websites will even like ship feeders and things like that. Although I will say that in the winter that might be a little complicated. But I do think that generally insects are a cheaper and easier option. The other thing about not feeding the tarantula insects and instead trying to go the route of raw meat is that it's not living prey. So you would have to kind of dangle it for the tarantula or simulate some kind of prey response in the tarantula. You would also, and I think maybe this is one of the biggest arguments against it, you would have to be so careful with cleanup because decaying meat smells terrible and it could cause a lot of nasty issues in the enclosure, I'm sure. It could invite bugs. So I guess if you were to do this, I would say only give them a tiny bit at a time so that you reduce the waste and the cleanup and the chance that there might be leftover meat bits all over the enclosure that you'd have to find and clean up. I heard someone say in the forums, and I think this is a really interesting point, that feeding the tarantula insects is advantageous because you can gut load the bug right before giving it to the tarantula. And if any of you guys are not sure what gut loading is, it's basically feeding the insects a nutritious diet so that the tarantula then benefits from not only the nutrients from the bug, but the things that they've eaten. So a lot of tarantula owners will actually take care of the diet of their feeders insects because they do want their tarantula to have a nutritious meal. And so I think that is a really great point. You can't do that with meat. And it did raise another, thinking about that raised another concern for me, or question for me, in that I think what the tarantula would get out of meat is possibly the hormones from the animal. Now, on the list of priorities in tarantulas in the wild, I don't think they would care at all. They're in the wild completely opportunistic. And they would be opportunistic in their enclosures as well, but I think that, you know, in the wild, they don't have anybody making better choices for them or supplying the food. And so I think that if there is any risk for tarantulas to absorb hormones that are not going to be okay for them, or chemicals in the meat that are not going to be okay for them, whatever it is, then why wouldn't we try to give them a safer, more foolproof diet? So those are some things to think about, and that is what I learned when researching this. It was really interesting. There's actually a lot of really interesting videos on YouTube about tarantulas eating raw meat, and I will link some of those in the description because I think it's kind of gross, but it is actually really interesting. And I think that they break it down the same exact way that they do with insects. I mean, and we do know that they do eat mice, and people feed them mice. So like, of course they can eat raw meat. But I would, you know, be very careful about where you get that meat from. Just like you would be very careful about where you buy pinky mice or your insects from. You want to get food that is not diseased, food that is healthy, unprocessed, and just to increase the safety of feeding that to your tarantula. If any of you have actually done this with your tarantulas, I'd be really interested to see what you thought about that. I don't think I would ever do it, but it is fascinating to think about. And yeah, I was kind of shocked to know that all those pictures that I was seeing when this started to make its round around the tarantula internet, that yeah, those pictures are real and it wasn't trolling. Like, it's a legit thing that you can do. So anyway, fun stuff. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you next week for Tarantula Tuesday. Take care. Bye.